So welcome to them as well. And then I'm just going to do a basic recap of the training that we've done in September last year, just so that we can all be on the same page with what needs to happen with the development. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen so that you can all see can you just give me a thumbs up if you can see the training presentation? Thank you. Okay, so what we are going to look at today is developing e-learning courses. And underneath that, I'm just quickly going to touch again on the planning, the development, the moderation, and then also the editing. Okay, so under the planning, we will look at the course planning. How do you plan the whole course? And then also the unit planning and layout, and then going down into lesson planning. And then we will carry on with development, physical lesson layout, then some things that you need to remember when you are creating lessons, and then also the assessments that you need to do. And then I will just quickly touch on the moderation process and also the editing process that continues. Okay, so with the planning, during the planning course, you will need to have your syllabus documents with you at all times so that it can guide you through the process of development and what needs to be done. Now, for Afrikaans from grade 4 to grade 9, we use the SA CAPS FAL or the EAT as it's used. So in other words, first additional language of Afrikaans, eerste addisionele taal, that guides us so that we know that what the learners need to know for each grade. For Afrikaans grade 10 to 11, we use the Cambridge IGCSE syllabus. Purely because we are moving towards a Cambridge exit. So from grade 10 onwards, we move over to the Cambridge curriculum. And we want to have that good standard when the kids exit the schools. Then for all other Cambridge subjects, you will use the IGCSE curriculum for grade 9 or 10 level, and then the AS level for grade 11 and 12. So please make sure that you have the right syllabus documents when you start planning your course, and also make sure that you only cover those topics and those aspects that needs to be covered in the syllabus so that we don't overload the course unnecessarily. Then I'm just going to show you a quick example of the course planning that I've done. This one is for Afrikaans, specifically grade 9 level. You will see in this, I've already planned out each unit. They will need to be for grade 9, there needs to be 8 units of eenhede, soos hulle sê. And for each one, I've already added what my theme will be for that unit. Now for the, this will also helps when you have completed, you focus now on one unit and you need to go back and start now with the next one. This will help you to stay focused and to just refer back on what you were planning from the beginning. Okay, for the AS level for Cambridge or IGC level for Cambridge subjects, it looks a bit different. You will see there's a lot more units that's in this. This is now for AS level. And here, what I've done is I looked at each chapter or module that they give in the syllabus document, and I've planned my units accordingly. So for unit 1, I'm going to look at data processing and information systems, for example. And then you can plan, you will have a general idea of what each unit should be about. So this will guide you to make sure that every unit is focused on specific information relating to each other. You will also notice that for the AS level, there is semester exams and final exams that's also added, where for the, if I go back, you will see Afrikaans grade 9 do not have any semester or final exams. Okay, then after you have done the course planning, you move down into unit planning. So this is now where you are going to break up your chapter that you are going to do into smaller sections of or smaller lessons that the learner will be able to handle. You will see this one is now also part of my IT planning that I've done. And I've taken one unit and I've broken it up into different lessons so that I know in that lesson I must focus on this work. So then it helps you to make sure that you don't drift off to different topics that's not relevant to what they need to know. And this also shows you the basic layout. Now, for Switched On Education prefers that we stick to the layout that is going through all of their courses, which means that you will have 3 to 4 lessons and then a quiz, 3 to 4 lessons, quiz, again a few lessons, your final quiz, and then your test. And with your projects that will be in between. Okay, for Afrikaans, it looks, my planning was a bit different because we are working according to themes and not a chapter at a time. You will see this was unit 1, which the theme was Kunste en Concerte. And for each lesson, I have now broken it up. And here you need to plan which language aspects, which literature, the writing, oral, everything that needs to be handled in that unit, you need to break up into lessons and make sure that we don't overload the learners with too much poetry, for example, or too much, we add maybe too much oral for them or something like that. If you break it up like that and you have your different lessons already set up, you can see, oh no, I can't do nouns in this one because I've already touched on nouns in the previous lesson. So it helps you to focus and to make sure that we don't repeat lessons, but that we also don't leave out stuff that they must know. Okay, then when it comes to the lesson objectives and course objectives, it's important not to underestimate the importance of them. Just as there should be learning outcomes for each lesson, you must also create learning outcomes for the course. Although you're not going to send it to me, it will just help you to make sure that the course creation process is not frustrating to you or to us as well. And it will also, the learning outcomes will explain with the measurable verbs what the learner must be able to do, know and feel by the end of the course. What skills they must be able to demonstrate, the knowledge that they must obtain, and what feeling they must have going away from the course. Having clear outcomes ensures that you stay focused and on track, adding only the relevant information that's needed. An effective strategy for unit development is to begin with an overview page of that outlines all of the lessons, quizzes, projects, and tests that's required by a module or unit, as we refer it to. Sometimes developers have a lot of information that needs to be crammed into an online lesson or unit, which can create a disinviting learning environment. So in order to create an inviting online environment, your course needs to have a clear and consistent structure. And then lastly, remember that your current planning for the units is not set in stone. As you develop, it's also important to go back and reflect and go back to your planning if it's needed, and adopt your planning document if you see there are possible changes that you can make to improve the process of learning for students. Okay, then we get to the development part. Now, at this stage, it's important that you have the right resources for the lessons. Your resources for creating lesson content can vary from published resources like your textbooks, online resources, or even previous exam papers. Multimedia resources can include images, or pictures, your audio and video content, or demonstrations such as a recorded lab experiment. It's important just to make sure that all the resources that you used is correctly documented for the referencing of lessons. And as you do your research for your lessons, whenever you make use of content, please make sure you collect the information that is needed to reference your source. Especially if it's published resources, you need to make sure that you don't find yourself guilty of plagiarism or breaking any copyright laws. So I also, when doing my own lessons, I prefer, especially with pictures, I refer sites that provide free pictures like freepik.com. There's many others that you can use as well. It's just important that we make sure that we reference them correctly and that you don't copy and paste any information either from a web page or directly from a textbook. So you can use as many resources as possible, just keep to the copyright laws, please. Okay, then this one is quite important. What does the lesson layout look like? Now for this one, I've just created a basic, this one you will see says CAS, which means it's Cambridge AS Information Technology. And then I have my unit, which says unit 1, data processing and information. And lesson 1 is what is data. So every time you start a new lesson, you will start with that information at the top of your document. Then because we are doing Christian curriculum, your Bible verse need to be in there for the kids to learn. And then your objectives, or in Afrikaans, we talk about doelwitte or whatever the case may be for that specific lesson. And then you are going to start with your lesson content. The lesson content must include everything that the learner have to know at this stage. Remember that the child doing these lessons on SOE do not have a textbook with them. So you are basically writing the textbook for him. So everything that the learner must know must be in that lesson content. You can add in that your pictures. If you want to add a video for extra explanation, just please provide us with the URL of that. If it's a YouTube video, just give us the link to that video so we can add it in. And then after you've added the content, you will start with lesson questions. In this case, it can be plus minus 20 questions, depending on the length of the lesson. And make sure that you include your answers to those questions. It's very frustrating for the editors if they have to upload to SOE and there's no answers, and they must have to go and search for answers. So the lesson questions plus minus 20, then you will have underneath that, you will start with quiz questions. So just put a little heading saying quiz questions, where you will add 4 to 5 questions also on that specific content in the lesson. And then you will have after that your test questions, also all of them with answers. And then if you are doing Cambridge, you will also add semester exam questions and final exam questions. For Afrikaans, there will only be lesson, quiz, and test questions, but Cambridge will have semester exam and final exam questions also. Okay, then just a couple of things that you need to remember when you are preparing lessons. Please make sure your lessons have all the necessary information the learner will need to understand to do the work. And like I said earlier, they don't have a textbook with them, so you are writing an online textbook basically for them. Make sure your lessons are attractive to keep the learner's attention. You can use images, audio, video, or even educational games such as jigsaw puzzles, word search, etc. to make sure that the learner is engaged, especially when we are referring to the smaller grades. And then please don't overload the learners with content. It will only confuse the learner instead of helping them. Please make sure that the information is relevant to the age group and that you don't give too much information. And then also remember that when you prepare your questions for the lessons, that the learner should be able to answer the questions from the lessons. So the learner must be able, when they are doing lesson questions, they must be able to go back into the lesson and go and find that answers. And we are not there to trick learners. So please, although we want learners to be able to think for themselves, and you can add those questions, we would prefer that you add a little bit of thinking questions as well. But the learner must be able to use the information from the lesson and apply it so that they can answer the questions. And please don't reinvent the wheel. It's not necessary that you rewrite everything from memory. There is a lot of resources available. So you can use what is available to you. Please don't try and redo everything because it's going to frustrate you and just prolong the development process. And then also prepare each lesson on a separate document, please. It will just help our editors with the loading process. And I'm going to give you an example. This is from the Unit 1, Afrikaans Grade 9. You will see that each lesson is on a different Word document, which will just help. It helps me when I create the transcripts that will be sent for audio recording, and it also helps the editors when they load the content to SOE. Okay, then we get to the assessments. When you create assessment, just keep the following in mind. The types of questions that are available on SOE is the following. You can add true or false questions, multiple choice where there is only one correct answer, and then multiple select, which is almost like a multiple choice, but it can have more than one correct answer. And then also fill in the blank, a matching, which is like a fit column A with column B, and then essay type questions, or where they have a writer and they physically have to write a sentence or a paragraph or something like that. Just remember that you must supply the answer with the questions, and we don't have time to go and search for answers. And also make sure that the answers are either placed in a bold font, highlighted, or in a red font color so that the editors can identify the answers easily. And then please don't use sub-questions, such as, let's say you have question 1 and then you start with 1.1. The system is not set up to work in this way. It will help us just to stick to question 1, question 2, question 3. Otherwise, I must go and split up those questions into smaller or into different questions. Then we can't add tables into a question for a learner to complete. The system does not allow for us to do this. It can only be done in a project, in which instance you must then ask the child or the student to redraw the table in their notebook, and their teacher will then have to go and mark from that table from their notebook, which is a bit difficult, especially considering that we have a lot of homeschoolers using the system as well. So just make sure that when you do add questions, that you will rather refrain or use a different method of testing them instead of using a table. And then lastly, also remember that the system does not currently allow us to upload answers for writers. So that the teacher can check the answers. So for now, what I've done to overcome this problem is I upload all the answers in the form of a PDF to a lesson that I create only for teachers' information. This lesson will be set to be skipped for learners, so the learner will not have access to the lesson. And I then add a link to all the answers for that specific unit so that the teachers will have the required information to score. And just the last thing on projects, also remember that when you create a project, you must also give us the rubric that I must upload for the marking of the project as well. Because different teachers will mark according to different criteria. So we need to supply them the correct criteria so that we know that every learner will be treated equally. Okay, then just quickly going to touch on the process of moderation. When you have completed your unit, you will send the lessons to me via email. I will just then check the basic format, if the documents are correct and that all the assessments is there and everything, and I then send it off to the moderator. If it's not in the correct format, I will send it back to you as developer to check for any errors in the layout of the document. When the moderator receives the course or the unit, they only check that the course content is up to standard. So I also supply them with the course documents, and they check that what is done in the course is up to standard and that all the criteria is met, and then just for the basic spelling and grammar. If all of that is done and there is no corrections to be made, it will be returned to me. If there are corrections that needs to be done, they will tell me, please, this needs to go back for changes to the developer, and I will then send it back to the developer for the corrections or changes to be made. The moderators are not appointed and they are not being paid as much as developers, so we can't expect the moderators to. Okay, just the last part is the process for editing. Okay, once I've done, everything has been done by the moderators and they are happy and the process can continue, I create the transcripts and it is sent off for audio recording to the sound studio. Where possible, we use our own people that's available on site for recording, but we might source you if needed, if we can't find another suitable person. Our technical editors then load the lessons to SOE and then also upload all the pictures, sound, video, etc. When all of this is complete, I check it again online to make sure that everything is in place. And if I'm happy, I also then ask Daniel from SOE to also check it. I will also then in the future ask the developers to also, if they have access to the system, I will also ask the developers to go and double check as well, just to make sure, especially with questions, I do not always have the time to go and check every single question that the editors have put up. So I'm going to ask you in the future, please just go and check for, especially for questions, and that everything is correct and ready for to be published. Okay, so then if everyone is happy, I then go and publish the course and make it enrollable for students. And then only after the units is published, then SOE pays Anchorage for the content that has been loaded. and I will then contact you to supply me with a claim form and to make payment to the developers, moderators, and the editors involved. Okay, now we need to have the contracts in place for all the developers, editors, and also the moderators. So please, it's been quite a busy time for me from January. So if I missed you, please just give me an email or a WhatsApp and tell me that you still need to have a contract in place so I can send you the necessary documentation to fill in. Okay, so I'm just quickly going to show you just an example of a lesson, just to give you more of an idea of, I'm just going to do an Afrikaans one now as an example, just to give you an idea of what the final product would look like. Okay, so you will see this starts with the headings, like I said earlier, Afrikaans grade 9, and this is EAT, and then the unit or eenheid name, and then also the lesson and the lesson name. Then I have my, you can add a picture. If you don't want to add a picture, it's fine. We will then have the Bible verse and then the objectives of the lesson. And then I start with lesson content. Now, in this case, if I receive a table like this, I change it into a picture because the system does not allow me to create colorful tables, for example. So everything that looks like this or a picture like this one, I create a picture from it and I will then place it in so that it looks exactly like you've imagined it to be in your lesson. So there I have all of my lesson content. I've split up different sections of work so that the student knows this is now a different section that I'm busy with. And at the end, you will see now I start with now the lesson. This is now where the lesson content have ended. And now I start with the questions. And I have for this one, in this case, it will be a matching column A to column B. But you will see I've already placed the right answers next to each other. Simply because when I upload it to SOE, this is how I'm going to add it in any case. So you do not have to go and mix up the fit column A and column B and then tell me this one is connected to number 3 or whatever the case may be. You can only add the question, the right answers to next to each other, and the system go and scramble it automatically. And then this one will be a fill in the blanks, and these as well. So I've added for this, because this is grade 9 and it's a second language, I've only added 7 questions to this lesson. Then I start with quiz questions. And also giving the answers where it is needed. And then in this case will be what do they call it? A more than one correct answer question. So I've highlighted the ones in red, which will be marked as the correct answers. And then after I'm done with the quiz, I start directly with my test questions, and I have 3 test questions for this one. The reason why we have fewer quiz and test questions than we have lesson questions is because the lessons are, all of the work is meant for the learner to prepare themselves and to drill in the work that they have done now. When it comes to a quiz, because we have 3 or 4 lessons and then a quiz, those 3 to 4 lessons each have quiz questions. So if you give 5, let's say there's 3 lessons and there's 5 questions in each, your quiz will then have a total of 15 questions. And then the test as well, if you have 10 lessons in your unit and you put a test at the bottom, each lesson have 3 questions with 10 lessons, then you have a test with 30 questions. So that's why we keep the test questions and the quiz questions to a minimum. Otherwise, the child will sit for a 2-hour test, which is not how we do it on SOE. It is only when we come to the semester exam and the final exam where it will be more questions, because now we will have, you can also add, if you are doing Cambridge, you can also add 2 to 3 questions for each semester and final exam. And all of that added together will then, because you are now writing of just not just 1 unit, but maybe 5 or 6 or maybe 10 units of work, all of that questions added together will then give you a 50 question or a 60 question test. Okay, so then the child is not just tested on 1 unit of work, but they are tested on several units of work. And it will also then give us an indication if the child is ready to sit for the external Cambridge examinations. Okay, so that's basically all from me. Is there anyone that have a question? No questions?
Jy gaan vir ons hierdie nota stuur per e-pos, né?
Yeah, I did record the session, so I'm going to make it available to you. I will send you a link with the audio recording so that you can go and watch it again if you need to.
Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate.
Okay. So if there's no questions, then thank you for being here today. And if you have any questions, you can always send me a WhatsApp or an email, and I'll be happy to assist you. Okay, so have a good afternoon, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, dankie Estie.